and support sharing disengagement beyond today. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our two facilitators, presenters, speakers, professors, our very own here at Fitchburg State University, Dr. Kate and Dr. DeMisty. Welcome. We're so glad you're here, and we cannot wait to learn.
Thank you. Thank you, Medley. So I'll get us started and introduce our two presenters. So we also have Ben on here as well, I see. And before I introduce Ben, I realized, so Ben was a student of mine last semester. I've never said your last name out loud. Is it Cesar? Cesar Thompson? Okay. Just want to make sure I get that right. So we're hosting this event today and recording it as part or as an extension of a podcast that I recently launched called the History Mixtapes, and the focus is liner notes. It's a podcast about how scholars plan and stay organized and the different tools they use for writing. In each episode, I interview a scholar about what's in their pen case, something to akin to a pen case if they don't have one, how they plan their time, and their secrets to an organized scholarly life. But this is going to be a special episode that we're going to release after that first mixtape is done that connects scholarship, art, the classroom, music, and is part of the events of Black History Month at Fitchburg State University. So on the podcast, we talk a lot about writing and inspiration and voice. And so DeMisty and I collaborated on this special episode and came up with an idea after contemplating the theme of this year's Black History Month, the Black family, and how we can consider the familial connections between poetry and hip hop, verse, and rhyme. So I'm Katherine Jewell, a professor of history at Fitchburg State, and today I have two guests here to talk about poetry and hip hop, writing, and these connections and their process. So we have two fantastic writers with us today. Professor DeMisty Bellinger-Delfeld is Associate Professor of English Studies at Fitchburg State University, concentrating in creative writing and poetry. She's the author of the chapbook Rubbing Elbows, and her debut full-length collection, Peculiar Heritage, is forthcoming with Mason Jar Press. And I'm thrilled to introduce Ben Cesar Thompson, a student here at Fitchburg State University, majoring in communications media, with a concentration in film and video. Is that right? Last semester, Ben took part with flying colors in my class on hip hop history and culture, where for his final project, he looked at the content of the course and was inspired to write an original work that he is going to perform for us today. So I thought we would start with that performance. Ben, if you're good to go. So I'm so excited. This is like every professor's dream to have a student perform a work that they created as part of a class. So Ben, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Thank you. No, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be great. Thank you. So first off, this is for BK. This is for Harlem, Queensbridge, Hollis. This is from Grandmaster Flash all the way to Christopher Wallace. Man, there's a fiend on the corner, pocket full with a roll of quarters, originally for a laundromat order, but resort to throw in what he can't afford to. Any street level soldier, a kid barely older than junior high, working to provide for his family, while a Range Rover drives by oh so casually. In the back of the ride, hunched over from last night, a bump in the bar to start the morning right. It's a young CEO. Man, he watches from afar, yawning passively, indifferent to the rest of y'all. For him, from a distance, such a different reality. Claim because of riches, but it's pigment though actually. Naturally, life be sweet now his teeth filled with cavities. Label this a category skin type catastrophe. Really, son, evicted moms get thrown by spitting winds of ignorance who want to fucking just hit a bong and get higher, ball out in their white shit like Wimbledon attire. Let it run, winning quick is so fun when you're silver spooning. Never losing as long as your daddy revenuing. Cashing checks, snapping necks as the crack is dealt. Block busts, karate chops in the black belt, that's wealth. Man, upgrade to new developments. Oh well, north and east, away from these broken ass tenements, somewhere swell. New residents, Catan type settlements. Perfect home of brokers who might get nervous when said locomotive urban jokers settle in. Local neighborhood presence never felt this delicate. Brothers seen for their clothes and they street rhetoric. Talk yet y'all Caucasians, the real ones selling at least y'all souls to make a little bit of benefit. What's up? Profit always ahead in boxes filled on checklists of ethics, always expected like kids whose parents had no jimmies, unprotected. It be how lotto picks for the Celtics are ever projected, progressing to more than Dro Sessions, still I ain't infected. Less ingesting, more confessions, well then I guess I'm fried. Benny been this dope since 1999. Nevertheless, probably also in my last life too. Never mind bless. I never grew up hungry. I always had a roof over me. Mama's from Kingston, so she doesn't want the same environment for me. She got a PhD from Barnard in the 70s, close to when Bronx was burning, streets was under major heat. But she said his name is Benedict. Fucking Benedict, heaven sent. I mean, that's what my mama thinks. I guess I'm blessed in the nomenclature. Yes, thanks, Mom, for the name. You're the reason I'm a major in arts. I rip darts. I go to film school. I sip liquor after dark and in the morning too. But that's just to help me feel good. It's not your fault. It's me, Mom. These veins are stained with pain. You probably could never clean up even though you try. I see you. It's more than my mother. You're a beam of light behind the storm, recovering the shame of last night. Man, I can't go on with this. Sorry. Okay. That's like, I don't know, but that's a little bit, I went a little over, I'm sorry. But
It is wonderful. I was wondering if maybe everybody,
well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Fantastic.
No, I
It's
appreciate
fantastic.
that.
I don't know if everybody, like, if you have the raise your hand function, like to clap and show our appreciation.
A round of applause.
Thank you. I hope you could hear it okay.
Yeah.
You can hear it okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Comments in the chat, and because I think, for any of us who does anything in public, I think we understand, how much courage it takes, to put yourself in front of people, and then also to put your soul in front of people, and to put, your emotions in front of people. And I think, that's one of the larger connections that I want to think about in this process of writing, where this comes from, where this process of expression comes from. So when I'm doing the podcast in segment 1, I usually talk about tools. It's very simple things like a pen. So I'm just wondering, taking off from that idea, maybe each of you could talk a little bit about your writing genesis. Where does that writing come from? It comes from the tip of the pen, but when you're approaching writing poetry, and maybe we can start with DeMisty, and then we'll hear Ben. You can kind of, come down, and then we could just think about, how does a poet, how does someone who's writing hip hop first to be performed? Where's that genesis of an idea come from?
So ideas come from lots of different places with my poems. I found out, well, I didn't find out, I guess I kind of discovered that a lot of my poems are inspired by what happened in history, and maybe it's the project that I was working on for Peculiar Heritage. And one of the things I was looking at with that particular book is how our history of enslavement and colonization informed our present day. And I started writing that book in 2016 in November. And I didn't know it would become a book, but it kind of grew into that. And at the end, there's hopeful things. So history really informs a lot of my writing, and art does too. One of the projects I'm working on now is very expensive, believe it or not. What money is in poetry, but that is just looking at art and the images of mostly the Black body, but other people of color, and artwork by visual artwork by white people or European, Eurocentric people. And I'm going to move eventually with that project to work by people of color expressing themselves. And that's a long project. I published some of those pieces, but that's going to take a while to come into fruition just because of money and wanting to see a lot of this artwork in person. So history, art, news, silly premises, things that I think of Like, what if there was a list of all the people who died from my graduating class? What would they have died of? And then everyday life. And so those are where a lot of the stuff come from. And I might start with one idea and move to something else. And if something really works well, I might keep going, or I might write more poems along those lines. For instance, with Rubbing Elbows, I think the first poem in that series was about Stevie Wonder. And I thought, well, why not? Why just write about like this imaginary meeting with Stevie Wonder? What about Jimi Hendrix? What if you got to talk to Whitney Houston before or after she died? So just playing with that idea. And that's how that chapbook came about, talking to people who are famous. And some of the people were recent and some were really old, like the Schumanns. And so I would go on for a while. And I'm working on this project now, this other side project where I feel like this is never going to get published. It's based off of this jazz song where it's just, it never resolves until the very end. It's like all these lines that keep going up and up by this band called the Bad Plus. And that's never going to, right now I have like 16 or 17 poems. I think I don't know what to do with this. This is just too experimental. But as far as writing tools, mostly like actual physical writing tools, I would write on the computer for the most part. And lately I keep a notebook, and usually my notebooks are online. I show my students this. Lately I've been writing on theme paper because I also play music and I also write music every once in a while. So I find that it's fun. I'm not going to try to stick into the things, but I just like the way it looks. And these theme books that I have are kind of beautiful, artsy fartsy looking books. So I like those for tools. So yeah.
That's awesome. Ben, how about you? Where does your inspiration come from?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you mentioned, art. For me, like art is anything really, but like I get inspired by obviously other just like rappers in general, like lots of artists, musicians. But I think the biggest thing for me is just like life in general. I just try to like take from my experiences and like just like memories, and just try to make it like narrative driven, almost like when I write like a story. And I read one of your poems and forgot the name of it. And I haven't read Rubbing Elbows yet, but I want to order it. Like, you just like the way that you write is crazy. And I don't know, man, it's just everything. It's my highs and my lows, like just like memorable times in my life. I try to use that as inspiration and just make it so that like somebody can connect with that. And also just, I don't know, man, I just try to make it authentic and just something real that I know about. So, but my mom honestly is probably like my biggest influence, just because she's like a writer and she's written poetry obviously, and just everything. She's like just showed me like the beauty in like storytelling and movies. So, that's just, I try to just find inspiration like everywhere, honestly, just every day. But I like talking about people that are like misrepresented, honestly. So whether that's like drug addicts, like people of color, like just whatever, like depression, like just as that as like a stigma. So I don't know. I also just I write too much rap since I was like little, but like I never really was serious about it or anything. Like I would just freestyle with my friends all that, like every single time I see my friends. There's not one time we don't freestyle, and it's just like that just makes. I try to just improv stuff. I'll gotta hear a beat, and like if the beat works with whatever I'm feeling, I'll feel that. But like a lot of times it won't. Like probably like 1% of the time will actually work. So I don't know, but thank you. Yeah, that's pretty much
it sounds like both of you have a strong kind of autobiographical turn in your writing, where like both of you sort of are taking from your life, you're taking from your experiences, but then it's also experimental. Like you're both sort of playing with verse, you're playing with meter, you're playing with rhyme structure in a way that's kind of leading you into new reflection on those experiences. That's not just about telling the story, telling the narrative, is that the art form itself is sort of pushing you into new constructions or new considerations of the kinds, and seeing those experiences from a different angle. Like, what are the different commonalities? What are the different connections that you find as you're constructing a story? I don't know. Does that ring true? DeMisty, does that sound?
Somewhat. I think I tell my students that I have a pretty boring life, so I don't like writing about myself. But having said that, I'm not that naive to think that I am not in my writing at all. I know I am. I know I'm the voice. And one of the things that my advisor said back in grad school is like, you have a very strong voice. And I held on to that because it's like the first compliment I got from someone who was, I consider extremely important, but also it made me explore what is voice and how can you hone that? Just because if you think of voice as something natural,
Right.
how do you make it better? Like Benedict says, he has been writing since he was 6. And I would guess that he has, of course, improved his rapping since he was 6 years old.
I actually haven't. No, I'm sorry. I never. I don't mean to cut you out. I've been rapping since I was 6. I wrote at a really bad time in my life when I was like 14 or 15 for the first time. Sorry, but I've been like kind of just freestyling though since I was little. But yeah,
Benedict,
either way, yeah.
see that as writing. I would see that as a form of writing. I would not differentiate the two. I'm sorry. It's something that you're creating and that's writing. It's just not on the page.
I like that.
Okay.
I like that.
But I'm sure that you have become more Benedict. Like you have improved, but your voice, I think that you're probably strengthening it as you get older. And one of the things that I love that you said is that 1% of the time it works. And I appreciate that you're astute enough to realize that things need revising or changing or tweaking. And I think that is, I think that's a nod to a practice artist, I think, personally.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good segue into the second segment, which is, what does the process look like for you? From going from the inspiration to the words on the page, the performance. I mean, some people haven't even thought that process through. They don't really know what it looks like until they're asked. And, so it's okay not to have one, but I'm wondering, if you're contemplating what that looks like for you, what's the flow look like?
Do you want to go?
Sure, Ben. Yeah, if you go ahead.
I can go. Okay. For me, I'm just so enthralled by multi-syllable rhyme schemes that I'll freaking get obsessed in that. And I read some of your stuff, and I only read a few, so I apologize. But from a lot of it, like it's just like prose. A lot of it is, and it's just you don't obsess over the rhymes as much, and that's good. But you also have it in there, and you have everything in there for a reason. Every single word is in there for a reason. Every single syllable like matters, and I obsess over that. But that, yeah, it is just a big part of it for me. I like just having interesting like rhyming schemes, but also it's just telling a story and making sure that it's actually authentic and it's something that I actually like care about. I can't just like make something I don't really care about. So, I mean, that's really what I would say, like, that I do. And also just, like I said, like she said, like, it takes time. Like, you'll have a lot of stuff written and you'll never really use it. And then maybe like you use like one line of it and something else and like put them together later on, something weird. But it takes a lot of time, I feel like, because I literally like, I only have 2 things I've written really that I'm proud of. So no, seriously, like, and it's not even that good. Like, I want to make it much better, but anyways, like, I don't know. If you want to go, I can maybe.
I think we're our own worst critics. I know.
I gotta stop doing that.
Yeah. I like what you said about authenticity, but what I guess my writing process is think long, write short, revise log. So I think I spend the less time actually writing something out. I think about things for a long time. I play with ideas for a long time before I actually write anything out. And the writing, because, well, being an academic, my schedule is very tight. So I usually don't have a lot of time to write. And so when I do write, it's kind of like this regurgitation of thoughts and just trying to get as much as possible on a page. And when I do have time, I'll go back and revise and clean things up. One of the things I started this year is just to have a check-in point with a couple of other women on Twitter to make me write during the semester, which is really hard, to get at least 1,500 words a week. And
do you think my mother could join that group?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Is that okay? I can give her your email or.
Sure, of course.
Is that okay? Yeah.
And it's no workshopping. No, let me read what you were. It's just like, how many words did you do this week?
She needs that too, because I mean, she's a professor too.
Yeah.
And no, I feel that you don't have as much time, but.
Right. And you don't have to be 1,500 words. It could be like I'm going to write 500 words, which is like 2 or 3 pages. This or something like that. And if we don't make it to that point, we don't berate each other about that. But yeah, so that has been helpful for me this semester, because I do have this idea that I've been playing with for a while, and this is fiction, and I want to write it, and I want to tell you guys something, but I can't yet. A couple of weeks I can. So I want to
no breaking news here.
No breaking news. So I want to get this one done, and yeah, so really writing, the actual writing part of it, not a lot of time. I wish I was one of those people, and Benedict, you'll probably come into this later in life, where you meet writers who say things like, oh, I get up in the morning and I walk on the beach, and then I come back and have my tea and I write for 4 hours. I wish that was my life. And I'm not saying those people are wrong to think so. I'm just saying they have very lovely lives.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Like, I got 5 kids, dude. Like, you know my mortgage on my house right now, man? Like,
yeah.
I live in the suburbs. Nah. Honestly.
Writing isn't always the most glamorous process.
No.
I have a friend who wrote most of her book at her kids' hockey practices. You know, just like sitting in the cold, like typing away.
My mom did that in my baseball games. Yeah.
You know, there's sort of this image of, you know, the writer like struck by inspiration, and then the words just flow onto the page. But it's work. Yes. It is, you know, I think one of the things that I've done for my students in the past is I've actually shown them edits I've received. Like when I published an op-ed, and I have one op-ed, like the whole thing was purple from the editor, like sending it back because he, you know, moved all of the paragraphs and then did a line edit. And I was like, when I sent this in, I was like, ooh, I'm feeling pretty good about this. And then, you know, it comes back and it's like unrecognizable. And, you know, so there's, you know, there seems like there's this tension. Both of you have brought up this word authenticity. And I think it can be a really hard thing for writers who are putting themselves out there, right? As you both are talking about, you're writing from these emotional places, from these experiences, you know, that are, you know, wonderful and painful and, you know, connect you to other people. And you're representing experiences that, you know, don't always get representation. And you want to be true to that. You want to put that out there. But then there's this possibility of like, oh, like it, like I've done the work, I've put it out there, and now it's going to be edited. It's going to be revised. It's going to be altered from that. So how do you reconcile these questions of authenticity and the actual work of writing? Or do you?
I haven't been like really edited by anybody yet. So I mean, you've published things, but like, I mean, from like just what I would like think, I mean, it's just, I don't know. That would be kind of weird, honestly, because you put everything in place for a reason, man. But at the same time, I think that's the job of the editor. Like a good editor, like won't change too much, won't change the foundation, and will like make. I don't know, but like, That's an interesting question. If you want to answer that, Dr. Bellinger.
Sure. Editors. Oh, how do I say this? There are some editors who are very hands-on, and it will change everything. And it depends on what kind of writing you're doing. Like when I did journalism, the work that was actually published, I thought maybe I'm writing horrible articles because this has changed so much. And I asked her about that, and she's like, "No, you're one of our best writers." And I think that's just that they're trying to get that the same style throughout their publication. But as far as creative writing goes, I have editors who are very hands-on and who do a lot of picking and changing things. And I feel I used to be, when I was younger, it's like, no, don't change my words. But as I grew older, like once I've written it, and once I've wrote, the first audience I have is myself. And once that audience is there, it's out of my hands. It's not my piece anymore. It belongs to everybody else. And people are going to take it and think of it what they mean. Poetry, for me, in the past, has not been edited much. The last poem I got accepted, they said, can we cut the last line? And whatever, sure, cut it. And back to what my advisor said, or another thing that she says, like, it doesn't matter. When you publish your collection, you can put it back the way you want it. So there's that. But I've come to love it when editors do, and they often, with creative writing, they'll ask you if you want to do this. They'll suggest things, and they won't push back. But one of the things I learned about writing is that you're so close to it that you don't know what's not working. You think it's all golden, or you think it's all shit. So it's nice to have a good editor that would help you with that.
Damn, I never thought of that. It's crazy.
I mean, and we could also put it in, the context of college, and that, when you're in these different classes, say you're in like your liberal arts and sciences classes, like you might think like, oh, this is the class I have to take. Like, I don't really like have a connection to it. I'm not really maybe drawn to the content. But the thing is that we're repeatedly giving you different forms, different topics to put your voice into. And ultimately, like, what we're trying to do in all of these different types of classes is help you find that voice through these different mediums of, whether you're writing about, the progressive era, or you're writing about ancient Greece, or you're writing, applying a sociological theory to a social problem, or, exploring something, through music and art and history of architecture, that it's these lower pressure venues where, you're not necessarily putting your own experiences into it, but you do then have that experience of, like, what are you really trying to say, and honing that process. And so, for all of the aspiring writers out there, seeking to find their voice, this experience of college writing is ultimately about that. We talked a little bit about this yesterday as well in yesterday's event, and sort of what college is for. It's for you to find your voice. It's for you, a place for you to experiment through all these different forms of content, to do that and to be able to put yourself out there in a relatively safe way. That professors, we're editors in our own way, I guess. But
no, I mean, I'm just blessed to have like professor like you, professor like Bob Harris, just all my professors at Kelly Morgan, honestly, like Mary Vreeland, like all of them, they're amazing. And I think just the biggest thing for me, at least as a student, is just like making that leap of faith and just getting it on the page, and just getting it all through. I struggle with that so much, but it's important. I gotta do what you said, like write long and like revise, or like edit short and then revise long. Is that it?
Think long, write short, revise long. That's like
yes.
Think long, revise short, and write. Wait, what?
Think long, write short, revise long.
Seriously, like coffee mugs and t-shirts.
Yeah. We got us a business cake.
Honestly,
I'm always thinking entrepreneurially. Well, I want to turn to segment 3 before we open it up for any Q&A, and to come back to this question of poetry and hip hop. you know, that we are checking the rhyme, y'all, as the title says. And so, you know, that now that we've explored inspiration and we've explored process, what do you two see as the connection between these two genres of writing? You know, poetry and hip hop, you know, through these examples, how should we understand the connections and divergences between these forms? And I'm gonna let either one of you jump in on that one.
First, I would say that it depends on the type of poetry, because what Benedict gave to us at the top can be considered rap, or it could be considered spoken word. I think if you were in any venue, it would work. So I do think there's that crossover. And one of the things about hip hop and rap in particular is that it's made, well, all hip hop, I guess, but me speaking about rap in particular, is made to be heard. Whereas poetry can be made to be heard. And a lot of times we think of reciting poetry, but it is made for the page. And then there's that difference between the academic poets and poets of the stage, which are spoken word poets. But if you're working on a page, there are some things that you have control in. And if you're on stage, there are other things that you have control in. I'll stop there because, I can talk more on what I think are the connections. But I think those, because of Benedict's performance, I want to have that launch board there.
Oh no, I think no, you nailed it right there. I didn't even think of that because, like, when you mean like poetry isn't always meant to be heard, it's not just like. Do you mean just like orally, or like orally, just vocally, or just like read?
There are some poems that you look at, it will be impossible to hear it. You know, like concrete poetry really deconstructs itself to the visuals sometimes. And like, well, how would you read this? And should it be read? Or if it's a poem that's really long, if we get into epic poems, or poetry, do you want to sit in here? Maybe you do. They did
a long ass poem, like a 6-page poem. You're just like,
oh, I mean longer than that. I mean, like, well, Beowulf, they did recite these poems, right? But will we do that now? No, we play video games, or we watch a movie. We probably, or we'll make a movie version of Beowulf and cast Angelina Jolie as the monster.
Beowulf?
Yeah.
That was a poem?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my goodness Christ.
I really
didn't even know that.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think when we do write for, and when I do teach poetry, my colleague Steve Edwards also teaches poetry. Great writer, great thinker, great teacher. One of the things that you want to work on, if you think about performance, is the rhythm. And that's one thing I want to drill in every student's head, is like, poetry should have a rhythm. And how do you put that rhythm on page? How do you do that? And I think that's another place where rap and poetry connect.
No, like it's like the rhythm, just the rhyme scheme, just it's the meters. I mean, that, like, they do share that, but it is different, as you noted. Like, it is, but it's just like, I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, can all rap be poetry? And can all poetry be rap? And I was just like getting in my head. I was like, whoa, like, but honestly, it's so similar. I mean, you take like rap, like people say it's like from the, Bronx in the 70s in the Bronx, but you know, it goes all the way back to West African, like Rio, like all those. It's weird. I don't even know it, but I read this quote, and it was like I think it was in like Jay-Z's Decoded, when he kind of talks about the connection between rap and poetry and just like how he writes. And he was like, people say like Bob Dylan is like a writer, like Bob Dylan's a poet, but they never say that really about Biggie Smalls. And I was like, that's kind of true. Like, but
yeah, I was taken to task by a student once. It was when I teach rhyme in my poetry class. I used the example of 50 Cent and the song Window Shopper when I talk about Slant Rhyme, because that song, if you ever heard it, it doesn't quite rhyme in some parts. It's just kind of slant. I'm trying to think of the words, but they're kind of slant. They kind of rhyme. They're more like assonance than rhyme. And in another part of my class, somewhere towards the beginning, I said, poets generally can't make a living from poetry. Only one person I know of has done that, and that's Maya Angelou. And as a reflection of the class, he said, you're full of BS here, because he said poets can't make a living, but then you mentioned 50 Cent. So
exactly. Exhibit A.
Yeah, I don't think he said BS, but it was essentially the same thing.
Honestly, because I don't know. It's just I did this. I write everything as a rap, really to a beat mostly, and then I'll just like take it down. I'll take the instrumental off, and I'll just recite it as a poem sometimes. But I don't know. It's just it's cool though. Yeah, I just like writing, but yeah.
So it seems like what you're saying is the big difference is if music is behind it or not.
Yeah, that makes the biggest difference, because I mean, rap, you're not gonna, and it's just nowadays like the production is everything, right? And like back in the days, like my favorite rapper of all time is probably Mos Def. Yeah. Like Mos Def is just, it's probably Mos Def, and then like honestly, I would say Earl Sweatshirt, because Earl Sweatshirt is psychotic, bro. That man, his rhyme schemes are just out of this world. I'm the biggest Earl fan, honestly, but there's too many I can think of right now. I have like 40 people in my head I can think of. I just love, but the rhyme, oh my god, that just like, but yeah, exactly. It's the music, like the production is so crazy these days that artists don't really have to have the craziest rhyme schemes, at least for mainstream. Mainstream people don't really care, I feel like, but.
See, I'm approaching it from the other end of somebody like Madlib in his like Shades of Blue album, where he takes the Blue Note catalog, and he's not. I don't think he speaks on there. I mean, he does in some of his other work, but he doesn't really identify as rapper, as an MC. He's producer and a DJ, but like he's bringing in spoken word content into the remix, in which it's it's like he's creating a poem, but he's not actually necessarily rapping it. It's like you can even have almost sort of a rhythmic poetic form without rapping.
I admit I've actually maybe heard that. I probably haven't.
Homework for everyone watching. Madlib's Shades of Blue. This is what I write to.
All right, I'm gonna write it down right now.
And his new album sounds out, and I should get Madlib, hit me up, like I'm your best advocate here. So but I don't have access to the form, so I don't know if any questions have come in via the form, but I want to open it up to the audience and see, who has any questions about rhyming. Do we have any questions just about writing or hip hop or poetry? I can open up the chat. Oh wait, there's the Q&A form. Thank you. Are there any in here? Wow, I don't want to lose this. Yeah, there's a Q&A form. I don't have the
exactly.
Yeah, Dr. Kate, I will. Me and Marla will manage the Q&A form.
Okay.
For you.
Thank you.
No problem.
So, I think Zach asked, where do you see rap and hip hop headed in the near or far future? Are there any changes that you are particularly excited about? I think that rap is always going to evolve, because that's what it just does. And I literally have no idea what's going to happen. I just hope I hope that K-Dot stays well. Hope that like a bunch of other artists stay well. Vince, Isaiah Rashad. But honestly, nowadays people don't really care as much about that. They just want hits. So I think it's going to get more and more based on production and just having something that's catchy. I hope it's not, though. However, there's one artist that I like that's kind of mainstream, and like it's Polo G, and I hope Polo G honestly does well. I don't know if you guys have heard him, but he's from Chicago and he's pretty good. But yeah, I don't know. It's like a young man's game, man. Like I don't know what's gonna happen. Like there's probably like a 15-year-old right now that's gonna be amazing in like 5 years. Just watch. Like I don't know, but I just I'm just excited to see how it evolves. So, but thanks for that question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of these questions that, you know, when I'm teaching this class, I have a hard time talking about, you know, really anything since the 90s, because the whole business model and the whole business structure, the music industry has shifted so much, and, you know, it's hard to know. And hip hop is now pop, and, you know, so there's a sort of crossover, but at the same time, you know, there's always still so much scrutiny and still so much questioning, and, you know, it's kind of an ongoing conversation. I mean, it is sort of remarkable that we're really not even to, like, you know, if we're talking the official, you know, birth of hip hop moment of, you know, 1973, 1974, we're not even 50 years.
It's still like young, like as a genre.
Thank you. I am still young.
Exactly. We're all still young.
I don't know. It's gonna evolve. There's one group right now from Buffalo, Griselda. I don't know if you guys have heard of them. You guys should check them out. They're pretty good.
I talk a good game, but I mostly live under a rock. So, you know, my you know, I'm a historian, so, like, I am rooted in the music of the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s with the book that I am writing right now. So that's kind of
MF Doom, man. Oh my God.
Yeah, rest in peace, MF Doom.
He's like
so where do you say the beginning is? Would you say like the last poets or before that? Because, you know, my history is limited.
Yeah, well, this is one of the big questions, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday. And, you know, when we talk about the origins of hip hop, we usually talk about, you know, the three founding fathers of Africa Bambaataa, DJ Kool Herc, and Grandmaster Flash. You know, and that they're in the South Bronx, these four pillars of, you know, DJing. It all comes back to the DJ, the MC, graffiti writing, b-boying, and b-girling, and that that those are sort of like the pillars of hip hop culture that emerge out of the South Bronx, really in the 1970s, and the urban crisis. I think that kind of origin story is, you know, pretty canonical at this point. Yeah. Whether or not that describes all of the other evolutions of hip hop. So if you look at, you know, in Los Angeles and how hip hop evolves there, you know, it doesn't sort of fit that four pillars model in the same way. And so, you know, if you're trying to find all the four pillars and, like, oh, look, there they are, it's hip hop, it doesn't always necessarily work. So, right, you know, where that timeline is in a place like LA or Houston or Miami, right, those regional influences are going to shift. And, you know, I think, you know, when we have a conversation like this, where we're trying to sort of identify these connections across genre, you know, we're looking at, you know, people like the Last Poets and you know, AM DJs and Jamaican toasting, to sort of look at the verbal arts traditions that are influencing and kind of rhyme structures and frames that are shaping, you know, rap battles, and that is being an interactive, you know, kind of foundational interaction that we maybe don't necessarily see with poetry, but is sort of foundational to hip hop rhyming, you know. So maybe that's kind of like a divergence. I don't know if I buy my own argument there, but, like,
no, I dig it. And I wonder, like, with the rhyming, all songs just rhyme. Most songs do rhyme. When you were talking about the history of hip hop, I was thinking about River, but anyways, with the rhyming, with griots, and even with medieval poetry, and after that, a lot of this is made to be remembered, and we remember it through rhyme. If you're doing it off the cuff or in battle, then it's easier to do rhyme than to do it without, because you can remember those things or riff off of that idea. So something to think about. At least for me it is, because I haven't thought about it before.
Oh yeah, it's just, I mean, poetry doesn't, I'm not as familiar with poetry as hip hop, so I can't speak too much as for the side of poetry, but hip hop, yeah, I mean, those pillars definitely were more prevalent in the earlier years, but we don't see people like doing graffiti. I mean, actually, no, we do. That's not true. We really do. We see graffiti, and we we don't see the b-boys and the b-girls as much. It's different. It's different. That's different. MC and DJ. MC is just the biggest part. DJ is the second. I think there's another one. Isn't there 5?
Well, so the 5th comes in with, that's like social consciousness and knowledge. So that's sort of,
I like that.
with like, like KRS-One and, and Brand Nubian and those groups that we're bringing in. And that's something that we haven't actually touched on very much, which is, that this is Black History Month. And we're talking about this as, as an African diasporic expression and art form in, representing an identities and experience. And so I'm wondering, and Rob Harris is bringing up breakdancers. So I'm wondering about how that frame of Africaneity and an expression plays into and culture from in a diasporic sense plays into your work. I'll check it.
Well, for me, I mean, my mother's from Jamaica, and she's from an early age just kind of just showed me Bob Marley and all that stuff, just a bunch of stuff. I had my grandfather was he had some connections in Africa, so just having that around my house definitely, especially as a person, like a biracial person, not knowing his father ever, it's just, I don't know, my mom really played a big part in that for me, and I'm thankful. She just says, always remember your heritage. And, it doesn't really matter. My mom is my dad. My mom's always been my dad. And I'm always going to love her for that. But it's just, I love the fact that it really is diasporic. My mom always used to say, your grandfather is one of the main leaders in the African diaspora. I never really understood that. And apparently he did a bunch of stuff with as being an ambassador and all this stuff. And I just need to read his book, honestly. And he died a few years ago, or it's been actually a while now I think about it. But, I try to just use that, his life I put that into my work too, and my mother's life into my work, and my ancestors' lives into my work too. And, I think that's just really important. So I don't know if
DeMisty, is your mic okay?
Oh, I'm here. I'm wondering how can I? Well, I don't know. Just being part of the community, and like I said, history very often informs my writing, and so does my own lineage, which is African American, and I understand that as part of the diaspora, the greater diaspora, and I'm always trying to call back to what that is and how that looks. All writing is entering a conversation. Any academic can tell you this. Any writing that we do is not in a vacuum. Someone is going to read it, and it comes from something, and it goes to something. And I really do think that is in my writing, and thinking about the things that I'm writing now, thinking about the things that I'm exploring now, as far as research goes, too. One of the things that I'm interested in presently is Afrofuturism, and even that word is kind of being problematized now, I guess. But the idea of how it's not just grounded in America, but all across the world, the idea of the speculative in various Black communities. But as far as my work goes, I always think that, I don't know, I think that I'm small fish all the time. So I don't know how that feeds into the rest of the world yet. Ask me when I'm buried.
Dark, DeMisty. I just want to see if there's any other questions. If anybody wants to unmute or put anything in the chat. Let's see. Zach's asking, if you create a written work that is ambiguous, do you feel any responsibility as an artist to help the audience understand what you're saying versus allowing the audience to read what they want to into the work? This is a good question.
When I'm invited to classrooms or to talks and people say things about my work, I think, oh, that's fucking brilliant. Who wrote that?
I know that feeling. Somebody reviewed my book and I was like, I should have put that in there. They said it better than I did.
Sorry.
We're having a moment of.
I like I said before, I feel like once it leaves me, it's no longer mine, and how people interpret it is the way that they're going to interpret it. And I think that's the only ownership that I have, is that I give this to you and you do with it what you will. I do get some questions from people, and some that are really far off, or some commentary that is really far off. And I don't think that is for me to go and correct that. For instance, someone says something really weird about this short story, this flash fiction that I wrote once, and it's just like, that's not it at all. But that's fine for that person to say that and write that and put it out there. If they were to ask me about it, I would respond. But I really think that the work should speak for itself. I really want to excise myself from my work. And I don't know how possible that is. That's what I would want, but I don't know how realistic that desire is, because people are always going to associate you with your word, which makes sense.
Yeah. I interviewed a musician, Will Oldham. We were talking about the idea of selling out and authenticity. And he talked about how he went and saw a band one time that was like, saying, well, like, here, this is my song and here's how you should interpret it. And his response was like you play the song, you put it on an album, and I listen to it, it becomes my song. Like, it's mine. And like the sellout artist is the one who actually can't let go of their work and let other people make new meanings out of it. Because, like, you think about something like a song, or a poem that's often read or consumed, I guess, in private spaces, in your bedroom, in your car, in your living room, that the words then fill up those other spaces and become, they belong to the person who's reading them, and almost reenacting them and reenacting them when they revisit it. And that it can be very hard as a writer, as an artist, to kind of let it go and let it be out there. But it is something that is important for the art to take on and develop those new meanings.
I think it's just really important to have any art with multiple meanings. I mean, because I need to work on that, honestly, because some of my stuff is just too straightforward. They're like, okay, you're a drug addict. Like, it's this guy, he's doing this. I want to have more meaning in my work, honestly, and like, so it can have multiple interpretations. So being more ambiguous, I think, is good. And I don't like, I want to, but I want to make stuff like that, and I want people to like be like not really sure, like never really sure, But that's how I would see it. But I think it's good to be like that.
Are there any other questions from the floor? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question, Zachary. That was fantastic. Any others?
Zach's question.
Good as a stumper. All right. So before we close things out, do either of you have any final words? Any thoughts that we haven't gotten to that you want to make sure that everyone considers?
I think so.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. It was great to meet you, Dr. Bellinger.
It was good to meet you, Benedict. Yeah.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing or hearing more of your work.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you.
Me too. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Medley, I'm going to turn the emceeing back over to you. Thank you both, Benedict.
Thanks.
Thank you all. This was definitely very enlightening. And I just want to make this statement. I think, Dr. DeMisty, you're just as important as 50 Cent. Okay? Don't you forget that. But I think it was very enlightening just to hear you all speak about your art form and so forth, and how we just need to appreciate it for what it is and not try to make it into something else or think that all art has to look a certain way. So I just want to thank you for bringing that to the forefront. Sometimes we just need to be reminded of that. So thank you.
And I just want to give Ben again credit for performing today. That's
Yes.
amazing. It's amazing. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Thank you for sharing. Yes.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. Um, this video once again is being recorded, so we'll be able to look at it for future references very soon. We have another program with Red Shades, a 2014 graduate of Fishburne State University, who's a rapper out of Boston. So please join us at 6 o'clock. And then our finale is the Taste of Soul Food tomorrow, Thursday at 5 o'clock in the Falcon Hub. So until then, everyone take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Mr. Riley, before you leave,